So, welcome to Girl Power. We are going to be talking about how we empower our daughters in this wild modern culture that we live in. And we're going to get into some actual practical ways that we can do that. So, um, I was just sharing about my four daughters that this is the work of my life. And I'm really blessed because this is also the work that I get to do in sharing this path of empowering daughters. What does it mean? What does feminine wisdom even mean? What does feminine power even mean? We're going to get into a little bit of that today. And I know that you're all here because you're also in this question. You're also on your own journey of healing, of maybe unraveling some scripts and paradigms and things like that. And you have your daughter sitting right with you. I see. And you're wanting to know, how do I translate this to her? And the idea is that hopefully we can do that and integrate that in ways while our daughters are still young, so that there's less unraveling and things like that that need to happen later in life. So that's my big inquiry for the work that I do, is how do we take the wisdom that we're learning that's out there? There's so much incredible women's wisdom right now. It's just mind blowing. But how do we integrate that and then live that in a way that really impacts our daughters? So here's how it's going to work today. The content of this class is going to be about 45 minutes. And then at the very end of the class, I'm going to share a little bit about something I'm super excited about. There's the opening of my Feminine Superpowers course that's going to happen today, and I want to share a little bit more about that with you at the end. We're also going to have a Q&A at the end, but this next 45 minutes is going to be content that I've pulled from lots of different places, my own personal life included, and I'm super excited to share that with you. And I hope you walk away with something that you feel like you can really grab onto and integrate with your daughter too. So deep breath as we all just arrive here in this space together from wherever it is that you've been doing, whether it's morning or afternoon or work or kids. Thank you ahead of time for tuning in and for trusting me to spend this time with me today. So here's a little bit about my background quickly before we dive into the content. I have a graduate degree in biology, and I'm also an herbalist and a doula, and I've been working with women as a coach. So I'm taking lots of different worlds here, and I'm bringing them all together in a way that can translate into this work of empowering our daughters. So my passion is taking like the best of what science can offer us and the best of what feminine wisdom and ancient wisdom can offer us, and combining those in a way that's grounded and powerful and something that we can offer our daughters. And what I found is that on my journey is that these spaces of feminine wisdom and feminine power can sometimes be a little bit hard to access. Meaning, you know, well, for example, I was talking to my sister-in-law this past week. She lives in Salt Lake City, and she was saying that there's a women's circle in Salt Lake City that she's been to, and this women's circle is invite only. It's not advertised really anywhere. You kind of have to know someone to get into it, and it's sort of this like underground, like secret gathering. I actually like love that. I think that's really like interesting and kind of fun, but it also represents this truth that I've experienced and also talked to a lot of women about, that these areas where we learn feminine wisdom in modern culture can feel a little tricky to access. Like where do you find that invite, right? Like, do you have to be like a super spiritual hippie person to like, you know, actually ground and understand what feminine wisdom is? And you don't have to be. And so really what I want to bring together with my skill set is ways to access feminine wisdom that we all carry, and ways to actually integrate that and translate that to our daughters. So I hope that you feel that in this space today, that we can enter into a space of learning together, and you have something that you can take away from that. So we're going to talk today about how we can expand this understanding of feminine of femininity for our daughters so that they can really anchor into their power, their worth. And we're going to do that through the concept of archetypes. So that'll be the first thing that we talk about. And then I'm going to actually lead you through a circle, like creating sacred space, the way that I do with my daughters here at home. And hopefully all of you also got the downloadable circle leading guide when you signed up. And I hope that that's helpful, but that will be, if you have that with you, great. But we're actually going to go through the motions of what that looks like, because that in itself is probably one of the greatest tools that that I have found for creating a space to translate this wisdom. So hold on a second while I allow a few more people in here. So I want to start with a question. When you hear the word feminine, what comes up for you? And you can drop it in the chat. What word, feeling, it can just be like a one word feeling or emotion. When you hear feminine, what comes up for you? Fierce, yeah. Weak, yeah. Flow, nurture, Wonder Woman, awesome, we're gonna talk about that. Soft, embodiment, yeah, soft. Oh, feminist. Yeah, that too, that works. Gentle, yeah. So the idea here is there's a lot of different messages that we get in modern culture about what feminine is. And particularly this is important because our daughters are getting a lot of messages about what it means to be feminine. And someone says it's shifted. Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's definitely shifting. And let me just say real quick that there is a much wider and super important conversation going on around like gender identity and things like that. And for this class and this work that I'm doing, it's really speaking to those that are identifying with like a feminine core essence, right? And identifying with a feminine biology as well. So my story is that as a girl, and I could kind of put this together later in life, but my story is that I didn't really feel like I fit into some of these definitions of feminine that I saw around me. So somebody said weak, and that's kind of what I saw. And it wasn't overt messages. It wasn't like, you know, conversations that my parents were having directly with me, but there was sort of something in the water about I absorbed this understanding of feminine being weaker, potentially even less valuable, a little bit more needy. And I didn't feel that way inside. And so it was confusing because I was trying to find my space, right? I was trying to find who I was, and it resulted in me in some ways sort of rejecting the feminine essence in myself and feeling like, well, it's clearly valuable and it's clearly powerful to show up in more masculine ways. So, you know, it becomes confusing as a young girl. And that is still definitely rampant in our culture. And yes, things are totally shifting. And I love that we're all part of that shift. But there is definitely still, because we do live in a patriarchal culture, there's definitely still these underlying messages around femininity. And mostly what I find is that there's that the understanding of feminine seems to be limited. And I'm going to give you some examples. So those of you that said that you have like the 7-9-year-olds, when girls are like in that 7, even up to 11, 12-year-old age range, there's this like free flowing expression of femininity. They are not feeling like they have to pick some feminine expression. They are just trying it all. So I have a 7-year-old who literally right now today is wearing like this super like delicate, like long ball gownish dress, a badass leather jacket, cowboy boots, and like these John Lennon sunglasses, and like running around like with a sword that she's pretending is a stick, and like no questions asked, right? Like she's just like being herself, expressing herself. It's beautiful. So and that's pretty typical for girls of that age, right? They're just like figuring out what they like and who they are, and they're running around expressing it all. And when girls end up in, approach and get to that pre-adolescence and approaching adolescence time in life, there's cultural pressure that says to them, and sometimes this is just in the water, it's not saying necessarily out loud, but they have to kind of pick an expression of themselves, or they have to fit themselves into one of the ways that culture is defining feminine. And that is the part that can be very confusing, and research is actually showing that it's impacting our daughters in a negative way, because they all of a sudden feel like they have to constrict themselves, right? They have this free flowing expression, and now there's this like kind of weird pressure of like, okay, well, am I this kind of girl? Am I a girly girl, or am I not? And so that causes some angstiness, and research even shows it's causing higher numbers of eating disorders, depression, even suicide, and things like that. And in girls in that 10 to 14 range, right? So when they shift into that 10 to 14 range, they begin to go through normal developmental sifting and figuring out who they are, but also like feeling this cultural pressure of having to figure out, having to pick an expression. So the truth is, there's so many ways, right, that we can express ourselves, and we on our journeys as women understand that, right? We've expressed ourselves in lots of ways up until now. We've had maidenhood and motherhood and all of these different expressions. But in order to empower our daughters, right, if we want them to connect to this core power within them, we want to expand and allow them to be exactly who they are. And one of the ways that practical take home ways that we can do this for our daughters is through this concept of archetypes. And archetypes is this entire amazing discipline all on its own that we could talk about forever. But basically, they're patterns of being, they're ways, humanity's ways of being that we can all recognize. They're sometimes conscious, sometimes subconscious. And even if you haven't dove into archetypes very much, like, you can definitely identify them. And there's ones that definitely feel like that culture might kind of push women into a little bit more, or girls into. And there's ones that, and we can identify that. So I want to share a couple things that I do with my girls as a practical take home for you to address this concept of how do we expand their expression? How do we expand what it means to be feminine as they, even when they're young? So those of you with young ones, like, this is something that you can put into practice now, and then be talking with them about, so that when they hit that pre-adolescence phase, it's not so jarring. So before we talk a little bit more about archetypes, I'm curious, what feminine archetypes can you think of, right? Whether they're ones that you've seen in culture, whether they're like stereotypes or not. What are some feminine archetypes that you can name? And you can drop them in the chat. Yeah, the woman from Roger Rabbit. Totally, that's a great one. Yeah, mother, maiden, wild woman, crone. Yeah, yep. So those are all examples of archetypes, and archetypes live everywhere in stories. So, the woman from Roger Rabbit is a great example. So we can warrior-is. Yes, awesome. So I want to give you a couple examples of how I integrate this archetype wisdom with each of my daughters, because they are at each of those age groups that we're talking about. And media and books are an amazing way to do that. So with my 13-year-old, her and I recently watched Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, which, I mean, not the best movie ever, but she was curious about it and we watched it together. But the great thing about that movie is it has 4 different girls in the movie, and they each embody these different expressions of like, coming of age womanhood. And so we got to have the most incredible conversations about how these different girls were embodying their expression. and we got to name some of the archetypes. So one of the things that is really practical, if you have older daughters that are watching, well, I mean, everyone's involved in books or media of some type, but particularly with your older ones, stopping and starting, right? So finding a movie that's expressing some of these different archetypes, stopping and starting and having those conversations, right? And with her, the conversations can go in the direction of, well, and she loves this concept of archetypes. It's been like a real inroad for us for me to connect with her about her wisdom and her finding her identity and things like that. But stopping and going, okay, well, what archetype do you think, for instance, the woman in Roger Rabbit is embodying, and maybe she's not using some of the like archetypal language I know that you all used, mother, maiden, crone, but she will come up and be able to name what what she sees in that. So that one might be like the seductress, right, or the like sexy woman, um and we're able to have conversations about, okay, well, what, that can lead to different conversations about what choices that she's making and why she's making those choices and how does she feel about them. And so it's leading to these conversations that are led by her, and we're discussing these ways of being. And the overarching message to her is, you don't have to pick just one way of being throughout your day, even, but certainly throughout your life. And you are going to embody lots of different archetypes. So you don't have to at 13 pick, okay, well, I'm going to be the wild one, or I'm going to be the princess, or I'm going to be this. And friend groups may just naturally happen, right? Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, they all naturally sort of embody these different archetypes. But if our daughters can understand that there's spaciousness in that, they don't need to get stuck into one corner of an archetype or a way of being. So that connects them to this inner power, right? Because they can discern inside, and they can think about how they want to express themselves in those moments. So my 13-year-old is definitely a little more angsty about her self-expression than my 7-year-old, who's out there in her like leather jacket and ball gown. She's trying to figure it out. She's like, well, I don't know, like, what's my style and what's my vibe? And my encouragement to her is like, well, how do you feel today? Like, what do you want to wear today? She got Doc Martens for Christmas, and so she's like trying, that whole Doc Marten style. And a few weeks ago, we went to an event, and where it was a little bit more of like a dress up event. And I kind of have no idea what she's gonna come up with, because she's trying it out, right? And I'm like, yeah, try it out, try it all out. So she ended up borrowing a dress of mine. It was like, it was kind of almost like prairie, like long skirt, like very like delicate. And then she threw on those Doc Martens with the dress. And I just loved it. I'm like, yeah, girl, like, go for it. Like, you don't have to pick one. You can do it all. So just encouraging them that they can kind of try these different expressions and ways of being. So there are, for the middle age group, like the 6 to 9, there are incredible archetypes for kids. So Pippi Longstocking, Anne of Green Gables. So these are the conversations I'm having with my 7-year-old, where she loves listening to Pippi Longstocking on Audible. We watched Anne with an E as a family, and we stopped and started a lot and talked about these different ways of being. And so these conversations can definitely trickle down and start young. They don't have to start with, the older age group, and they get it. That's the thing. Like, these young ones, they get it. They're like, oh yeah, totally. With my 4-year-old, just this morning, we said her affirmation on the way to go drop her off. And so we've come up with an affirmation. She's helped me stop and start. Yeah, I mean, pause the movie and have a conversation. Yeah. So we came up together with an affirmation that would name the different ways that she feels in a given day, perhaps. And the idea behind this is it's super fun for her to say, and she got to make it up, and she really loves saying it. But when we say it, at the end of it, I always ask her, okay, well, what do you feel today? And she might pick one or two. And it's just translating this message of we're we're multidimensional beings. And as women, we are multidimensional. We have this core essence that can just look so many different ways. And so it's giving that message young that that's okay. And culture might have some different messages about what it means to be a woman or what it means to be feminine, and that's going to shift even over their lifetime. But but they can see that modeled in us, and they can hear it. They can hear that encouragement that, like, yeah, you can express yourself in all these different ways. So I want to share with you the affirmation that we said this morning for Arrow, my 4-year old. And she says it, and then I repeat each section, and she just loves doing it that way. So we she says, I'm happy as the sun, I'm quiet as the moon, I'm brave as the waves. And then she goes, I'm wild as the wind, and I'm silly as a monkey. And there's one she adds sometimes that she borrowed from my 7-year-old River, and River made this up. And sometimes I'm sad as a sad seal. We live at the beach. Um, so, it's simple, I know, but it's so powerful because each day she says that, and I give her the opportunity to choose how she's feeling that day. She doesn't have to choose one, and she doesn't have to feel all of them. So today she was happy as the sun and she was brave as the waves. And honestly, these little things remind me too, because I got to go, okay, what do I feel today? Wow, I get to like meet with all these women today and share these things. I got to go inside and go, what do I feel today? I feel brave as the waves and happy as the sun too. So those are, I hope, some practicals of ways that you can start to integrate what I think is some pretty core wisdom with your daughter at these different age groups. Um, so we're going to transition now to actually going through a circle. And maybe some of you have seen some of the circles that I've posted on like Instagram, social media. But this is something that I do with my girls um, a few times a week, and also during times that are transitional. So it could be a change of season. It could be the end of school is coming up. So we'll do a circle that marks they completed one grade and they're going to be going into another grade. And so this circles are such an incredible way to gather, create sacred space, and mark the transitions in life that are important, whether they're big or small. And this is ancient wisdom. This is like the oldest code, but it's something that has been lost in modern culture. We have some little traditions and ceremonies, but this skill of being able to create space is something that's one of our superpowers as women. That's something that I feel like we all carry, our daughters included. And so have creating these little circles like we do, they're simple, they're messy, they're all of that, is helping them understand what it feels like when space is created, and it's helping them learn to lead. And so this is all the kind of the back end. As we go through this circle, I'm going to take you through kind of the back end of what's going into this and what I think they're getting out of it. So if you'll read all of this in the guide. So we're going to go through the different aspects of a circle. There's 5 different ones. And I've included all of this for you so that you can have it and you can try it and play and have fun with it. But I wanna mention one thing, and this is included in the guide as well, and it's this idea of ceremony. And I think sometimes when we hear that word, we think of some like kind of big fancy thing, like a wedding or a big event. But ceremony is simply any time you open and close space. So in some ways you can think of your dinner table as a circle, right? As a little ceremony. There might be a way that you open the meal and there might be a way that you close. But there's sometimes it's just a little perspective shift in our lives to be able to think of the ways that these spaces are already happening, right? Sometimes it's hard to add a bunch of stuff, but you can think about ways that sacred space is already happening and being mindful and intentional about those spaces. Awesome, Vera. Yeah, that definition was really helpful for me too. So the first thing that I do, and this is all I want you, we're gonna go through it. It's gonna be a little bit longer than a normal circle in my house because I'm gonna explain what I'm doing a little bit. But please remember that this is short and it's messy, right? A lot of you have young kids, so don't picture like, perfect little children sitting there like doing the thing. It doesn't happen like that, and it's not supposed to. It's okay. So the first thing I do is I set up the space again, like, so we're gonna open space, right? And so we're gonna define it physically. I throw a blanket on the floor, and I always bring a few items to the center of that blanket. And those items, in like, ceremony language, you can call it an altar or you can call it a centerpiece. But usually those items represent something that is meaningful to us as a group because we're gathering together. So the collective. So today I brought for you a flower that my 4-year-old gave me this morning. And that will go on our altar. I also brought a rock that we painted when we were on vacation in the Eastern Sierras. So that's meaningful to us to have that in the center because it provokes a memory. I also brought this beautiful little woman. Hold on, let me let someone in. This is a gift that a friend gave to me, and to me, she just represents gratitude. So I wanted that as the center of our circle today. And I'm an herbalist, so I always have sage or some kind of herb. So we will often burn sage to, again, create the space, right? We're creating space. And often we're creating this space in the midst of like an already very busy, sometimes chaotic morning. All right, so if you can imagine like 4 kids and breakfast and everything going on, it's like camp at our house. and then I want to, like, in the middle of that, like, create this little sacred time together. And so all of these things are help to do that. They help to create that space. Also, back end, just little, side note for you to know, these things that I'm bringing, this is all symbolism. Another like key element of feminine wisdom, right? Being able to understand and like work with symbols in our lives. And that helps even the little ones understand that not everything is just literal. We can have something sitting in front of us that is a little statue of a woman, but also represents something deeper, something more internal, gratitude. So I usually play music as well. I couldn't figure out the Zoom share music thing today, so we're not going to have music today, but I do play some music, again, creating the space. So we're going to open our circle today with our values, and I also do this with my girls. But for this space, for Moon Daughters, for my community, our community, and for this class, the values that I'm coming with and that we're holding together are courage to push into some maybe new ideas, courage to look at our own junk, wisdom, always operating from a lens of wisdom, again, pulling from ancient wisdom, but also from the wisdom that we're learning from science in different places, and connection, because this is a place of, we can't do this work without being connected, and we're doing it how we can. And I'm grateful for the ways that we can connect on Zoom. And circles are at the center of that. It's about connection. So those are going to be our values for our circle today. And we are going to start our circle also with taking some breaths together. And I would love it if you would like to join me. You don't have to. But this is one that I do with my girls often, and we call it spaghetti breath. And on the inhale, we're going to take a big inhale, and we're going to bring our arms up over our head. So on the inhale, you're going to bring your arms up. Feel a stretch. It should feel really good. And on your exhale, you're going to shake your arms down. Yep. Shake it off. And maybe you get your arms down, but you're still like, gosh, that felt kind of good. So you're still going to shake. We do that a lot. Yeah, I see some shoulders going. Okay, we're going to do that one again. So big inhale, arms up. And on your own time, exhale, we're just going to shake it off on down. This kind of movement helps you just shake off any energy that you don't want to carry. It helps shake off whatever happened before this moment. And this is science. This is like being able to move your body actually expels and moves through energy that needs to move through. So it's fun and they laugh and it's called spaghetti breath, but it's powerful. There's something happening when we just go, okay, we're going to shake it off or we're ready to show up. Also, breath, very powerful tool, very incredible way. We're opening our rib cage by bringing arms up over our head, and then we're shaking it off. So breath is a tool that I use a lot, and you can see that that's listed there in the opening or grounding. You can use it either way. So the next thing we're going to do in our circle, this is going to be fun because I'm going to sing for you. We always do a song. And again, the concept of voice, songs are so fun for kids. So this is a way to engage young ones, but also using your voice is such a powerful, powerful, full body experience. And this is just a simple circle song that we do. So I'm going to sing it for you. In this circle, no fear. In this circle, deep peace. In this circle, great happiness. In this circle, safety. And then we'll go through it again and I'll ask the girls for words. What do you want to be in the circle? What are you feeling today? So they might say kindness. In this circle, kindness. In this circle, laughter. So they get to then contribute towards what they want in this collective space that we're creating. So the next part of the circle that we'll move into is the sharing or the teaching part. And this is the part where you get to be creative, you get to be you get to bring in your values, your family values, your faith tradition, your spirituality, the anchors of feminine wisdom that you want your daughter to know. This is the time to do it. It's short again. And for our time together, I want to talk about feminine power a little bit more. And this will be our sharing time. But real quick, so in this time, everything that we just talked about with archetypes, you could do a circle with your daughters and you could bring in some of that archetype practice. And that might be what you talk about tomorrow or today. Archetypes and how we see them in like a book that they're reading or something like that. So for today, I want to talk about this concept of girl power. It's the name of the class. And I named it that because we all connect with this in a really profound way. Like, yeah, girl power. Like I want my daughter to be powerful. But I want to mention something that one thing that I'm noticing in culture is that we're confused. Well, we're kind of like, again, constricting girl power to a more masculine form of power. So when you think about girl power, often we're like, that's when I'm feeling like super tough. And that's when I'm like ready to go out and like take it on. Yes, I love that. We need that kind of power. But there's also a lot of power that we have. I call it our superpowers, that is uniquely feminine. It's not always that like tough, battle type power. And I want to give you an example, and hopefully you guys don't hate me for this, but Wonder Woman, I loved the movie. It was awesome. A bunch of badass women that were on this island and they went out and just like took over. And there are times in our life, and there are going to be times in our daughter's life where they need to embody that kind of power. 100%, absolutely. But I think one of the limitations of the feminist movement is that that's now how we define girl power. It's like we're defining it in reference to some masculine expressions of power. And there are many others. And that's what in Wonder Woman, we saw these women and they were fierce. They were always in battle. They were just always going out and fighting and battling. So yes to that. And there are other forms of power that we can identify in each other and in our daughters and in, in books and media, again, that it's really important to bring that into the conversation as well. Does that make sense to everybody? I see some people commenting emotional intuition. Yes, absolutely. Emotional intuition, huge superpower, right? Anybody else have an example of a more feminine power? Mothering. I mean, we're all here having been through the incredible experience of birthing a baby. Sex sensitivity, yes. Holding space, empathy, yes. So as we create this time and space with our daughters, let us bring into their sphere these other kinds of powers, these other kinds of incredibly powerful ways that we can be, that are, I mean, absolutely on par, but they're we talk about them all together, right? There's not girl power is when I feel tough and I want to go and like hit something. Um, there's all of these other ways of expressing our deep divine spark, our internal power. Um, conflict resolution, yeah, yeah, listening. So there's so many. You guys know them. I mean, right off the bat. But there's one I want to share with you in this time that I think is one of our greatest superpowers as women, and one that I am very passionate about sharing with my daughters at whatever age they're at. And that is this ability to turn spirit into form, as Tammy Lynn Kent says. And all of us have done that in the fact that we have created life within our bodies. We've created life and we've given birth. So that is an example of turning spirit into form. But it does not just end when you're done having babies. It's not just about the physical turning of spirit into form. We can do that with anything. We have this ability, we're creators. We have this ability to take what isn't and create form with it. And I believe that's something that is so key and such an anchor for our daughters to be able to anchor into this idea of being powerful and feeling powerful within the midst of confusing cultural messages, in the midst of the normal developmental tumultuous years. If they can anchor in some of these ways that they know they're powerful, I think that they will be just, set in a way and untangling less later. So spirit into form. That's what I want to offer you today. So the next part of our circle is going to be integration. And this is a part of the circle that I think is really important, especially if you're sharing an idea or a concept with your daughter. It's going in through her head, right? It's going in through here, but we want to drop it down and integrate it. We want to embody these things that we're teaching them. And so integration is a way to do that. And there's a few ideas that I gave you on the download of ways to integrate that, ways that they can write down what they're thinking or share what's coming up for them and things like that. For our time together, I would love for all of us to close our eyes and put our hand on our heart. And just take a minute of silence. And I want you to think about this concept of being a creator, of bringing spirit into form in your life. And I want you to think about, where in your life do you want to bring spirit into form? Is there an idea that you have, a dream that you have? Maybe it's something big, but maybe it's something small. But can you think of a place in your life where you want to use this superpower to bring spirit into form? And if something does come up for you, feel free to jot it down in your journal. Keep that. It's important. It's sacred. And secondly, I want you to think about how today could you mirror your daughter's superpower to her. You can think about your daughter and think of like incredible There's things that you know about her. There's things that you see in her. There's tiny seeds. How could you mirror this internal power, this divine spark that she has to her today? Mirroring is such an important way that we understand ourselves and each other. So mirroring could be just encouraging her, or maybe you try having a circle and you share that with her. How could you mirror that today? And again, if you something comes up and it feels important, capture that, write it down. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. If you want to stay a couple more seconds, you can do that too. So to close our circle, we always close our circles with some element from the circle that we did together before. So you can pick what that is. So it could be a song. Today we're going to close with a couple more deep breaths. So you can you can bring your hand back to your heart, or you can just kind of get comfortable. And we're just going to take 3 deep breaths together to close our circle. So here we go. Inhale and exhale slowly if you can. Slow exhales calm our nervous system. Another inhale. And last one. And that is the end of our simple circle today. So as you can see, I spent a little bit of time talking to you about the different elements. But what I want you to notice is that this was pretty quick and pretty simple. And it really does need to be in order for our daughters to stay engaged, especially as they're learning like this way of being and this way of being together. So keeping it simple. Also, the key part I think is going to be letting our daughters, and again, you could do this with friends, or you could do it with just you and your daughter, but letting her lead different parts of it, because this is an exercise in leadership as well. She's learning to use her voice and she's learning to lead others. And like I mentioned, this is a tool that she will use the rest of her life. The circles in our house are usually 5 to 15 minutes. If I go over 15 minutes, and I have 4 girls, and then my husband also joins me. So if the circle is bigger, it might be a little bit longer. But if I go over 15 minutes, I lose everybody, and it's an unraveled mess. And we just laugh and go on. What language do you use with your girls if they resist going into the circle space? Yeah, yeah, it's hard. So I think that it's consistency. The more you do it, the more it becomes a pattern. There's lots of patterns that our kids get used to and habituate to in life. So of course you don't want to force it and you don't want them to hate it. But with a 3-year-old, there's parts of the circle that they are going to really like passing the rock. They can ask the question, "How are you feeling today?" I mean, it can be really simple questions. I find that with the young ones, the more I engage them, the more they're in it and they're present to it. So I would try that. I would absolutely include sons and partners. 100%. Um, and I think that there's not much that has to change in order to include a son or a partner. Maybe during the teaching time, you're not talking specifically just about girl power or specifically just about feminine wisdom, but there's lots of wisdom that includes our sons, and our sons need this kind of circle space and ceremony space as well. So I'm glad you brought that up, Cherie. Is the circle scheduled time in the flow of the day or when it feels right? We have 3 days a week that I just have planned to do circles before we start our day. And 2 of them is just the girls and I, and then there's one of them on Sunday mornings that my husband joins for, and that's a little bit longer, and maybe we prep a little bit more for that one. Um, and then sometimes I'm feeling it because we just need to bring it together, right? Do you ever feel that just like unraveled, like everybody's disconnected and we just need to bring it all together? And I'll do circles. I mean, I'll do circles even with the girls and sometimes their friends, you know. So it's both. I think scheduling them is has been really important for me though, because sometimes when you just let it be whenever they don't happen. And the more you do it, the more you realize how easy it is. So like if you get the wild hair and you're like, I want to do a circle, you literally like grab the blanket, grab the rock, you know, you just throw it together and do it. So I'd love to open it up for a few more questions, but I do want to mention this. So after today, later after this class, the doors to feminine superpowers open. And that is a offering that I am so deeply excited about because this is like the core of what I feel like I'm here to do, and because it's what I'm living. And basically in this 4-week interactive course, it'll be Zoom like this. We're going to go through the 4 core anchors of feminine wisdom, and I'm calling them superpowers. So when we talked about archetypes just now, and we talked about you guys mentioned some feminine powers. Some of those are unique to you, right? Like there are certain like there's certain like powers that I see in Melissa or Cherie and some of you here that are just like, I love that about you. Like you have this amazing ability and power to do this, and this is like your work in the world. But there are like anchors of feminine wisdom or superpowers that you were born with. It's not the type of thing where you're either born with this stuff or you're not. It's learned. So there are what I've sort of uncovered as the 4 anchors or 4 superpowers that I feel like we all can tap into as women, and the 4 core ones that I want my daughters to know, because this is the ground that they can operate from. These are their roots. So we're going to go through those 4 in 4 weeks, and those 4 superpowers are going to basically, if circles is something that you want to incorporate into your life, those 4 superpowers are going to be the sharing teaching portion of your circles for probably months to come, because we're going to talk about what they are, how we connect to them as women so that we can find our own healing and we can do our own work, and then practical ways that we can integrate these with our daughters in everyday life. Integration being one of the ways we integrate can be sharing this sacred time together. So as always, I'm going to pull in the science, the ancient wisdom, and try to build a bridge to a world that I know for a lot of us has felt a little bit hard to access. So that opens today. Early bird price is $197. And I don't want to forget to do this. I created a code for you all on this class. The code is girl power, all caps. And that is going to give you 25% off until midnight tonight. If you know this is something that you want to do, I want you to be able to join me, and I'm super thrilled about it. So I'm going to send you I'm going to drop the website in chat right now in case you want to access it now. And then I will send you an email later that will have the website where you can learn more about this course, and then also the code. So I would love to hear what is coming up for you. If you have any questions about, I've been answering a few along the way, but if you have any questions about any of the things that we've talked about, or different things that maybe have come up with you and your daughter. Yeah, do I have any suggestions about books or resources for teaching our daughters about archetypes? That's a great question. I have some great resources to learn about archetypes for you, and I can send you those. I have not come across an archetype book for kids. Has anyone else? There's some pretty knowledgeable people on this call. Melissa, do you want to share?
Well,
Jen.
I recommend the book Circle Round because it's full of all of the stories of the archetypes, and particularly from like the ancient myths of different traditions. So that can be really helpful, and they're
Yeah,
retold in really kid friendly ways. So Persephone and all of the Greek myths, all of the um, so yeah, there's just some really good stuff in there.
yeah, that's a great idea. That book also has a lot of like circle leading tips and things like that, and it's a big one. Um, Carolyn Meese is like the archetype guru. Her work is really incredible, and so if you yourself are interested in learning more about archetypes so that you can be having these conversations with your daughter, I just typed her name into the chat too. You can all her stuff is on Amazon. I'm sure you could find some stuff on the web too about archetypes. Question from Elizabeth. Hmm. Yeah, I get it. So Elizabeth's been like wanting to do circles, also homeschooling. Same here. And there's so much planning and going on that you're tired. I so hear you. I would love more inspiration. I see that you're offering this class, which I would love to check out. Yeah. I don't know of any books about this. I learned from other women. And let me say this about circles. This format that I shared with you, the five parts of the circle, that is the same format that that has been part of any women's circle that I've led or attended. This is like this is sort of an ancient wisdom for like recipe. It's not formulaic because you make it your own, but I learned from other women. I learned by being a part of circles. I learned by just jumping in and immediately pulling my daughters into this space. So there might be books out there, and you could definitely check out Circle Round. That is a really great one. But I don't know of like a book that sort of condenses everything that I just talked about and said like, okay, here's where it's at. I would say to you, just go for it. 9 a.m. Monday morning or 9 a.m. Friday morning. Literally throw a blanket on the ground and sit on the outside of it and pick two things. Like you don't have to go through all five. Pick two. Like grab an object that's meaningful and just ask your family, whoever's a part of the circle, hey, what can you be grateful for today? Just like we did. And pass it around the circle and let everybody have a voice. That in itself is an incredible start. That will change your day. Guaranteed.
Hey, Jess, do you mind if I add a little bit to that?
Please, yeah.
I just wanted to say, like, I've tried starting a circle before, and I got stuck on the like timing and who's going to be invited and what's going to be there and all the tiny details, and it just got me
Yeah.
overwhelmed and stressed. But just like pairing it with something that you're already doing. So maybe it's after you make your coffee, you sit down with your girls and just have a quick conversation. But for me, as far as like building a healthy habit around it and getting out of my like productivity brain
Yes.
and getting into the flow of it, is just
Yeah.
pairing it with an activity that I already enjoy and look forward to.
Yeah. Thank you. Is this Danielle?
Yeah.
Hi. Yes, 100%. And thank you for adding that. I so hear you. And yes, I think what happens is we get caught in the details of this. And I that's exactly kind of what I wanted and hoping that you hear is just try it. And I love pairing it with a rhythm that you already have. So right after coffee, right after breakfast, whatever that is, or try it around breakfast. You're already sitting down. Try it then. Um, and kind of maybe you graduate from there to like a different space in your house or outside or something like that. But the more simple you can make it, start simple and then add stuff, right? Start with something and then maybe you can add and get creative and do different things. But you'll kind of figure out what works for you, and don't get frustrated. Don't imagine it to be a certain thing. Just let it unfold and let it flow, like Danielle said. So the superpowers class, great question, is the next 4 Wednesdays at this same time, 11 a.m. PST. So yeah, 4 Wednesdays in a row, and same time, same place. Everything we talked about today really lays a great like foundation for, you know, bringing in some of these other pieces of wisdom. Let me just catch up in the chat here. Yeah, I hear you, Carrie. It is hard to make the time to do it. Also, the other thing I would say, and this is kind of just like my coaching side come out, start with something doable. So don't start with like, I'm going to do a circle every day of the week from 9 to 9:30. Like that's not going to happen. Like pick one day to do it, and then go from there. There's the link to the Circle Round book. Awesome. Yes, Moon Mother, Moon Daughter is also a great book. Yep, totally. That has a lot of great wisdom in it as well. If you're like, what am I even going to talk about in my circle? There's a lot of myths and different cool things in that book as well. Yeah, Carolyn has many books. Any favorites? What is the name of her archetypes one? You can also Google Sacred Contracts. Yep, that's right. She also has a blog post all about archetypes, which might be a great place to start. But Melissa just dropped that in the chat. Thank you. Yeah, and thanks, Kate, for dropping. She looks like she dropped another book that could be a really good one for you all too. So any other questions before we close our time together? I loved being with you all. Thank you, I want to say, for trusting me to show up and spend an hour of your time and go on this journey of asking the questions about how do we empower our daughters with feminine wisdom. Yeah, thank you, Amy. Here's the thing, I've talked to a lot of women about this concept of like, okay guys, like how are we taking all these great things we're learning about womanhood and translating them to our daughters? And hands down, everybody I talked to said, I want that more than anything. This is important. I want to do this. But just like you all have been mentioning in the chat about circles and, you know, how do we do it? This last year and a half has just been such a nervous system overload, and we're all probably on total overwhelm, right? And we're just like kind of on survival. And so what happens on survival is we go to what is urgent. What do we have to do? Whatever that is in your life, like I'm just sort of getting through it. And so what's hard is to incorporate these things that we all agree are really important, but it's hard to integrate them into life when you're kind of on survival mode. So that is my heart in both this class today, but also in the class that's opening today and going for the next 4 weeks, is saying, I know that this is something that's important. I know that there's not clear ways to just like open the door to this in our lives. And so that really is the vision behind this, is like, I want to open a door and create a clear way for you to come into this world, learn, and be able to integrate that with your daughter, and, you know, have the content and have the ideas to do that for, you know, the remaining, you know, the months after that as well. Yeah, thank you, Karen. I really appreciated all of this too. Thank you all for being here and showing up. And okay, before we go, I would love for you to kind of think back over our hour today. We're right about at an hour. And I want you to think of one word, highlight something that stood out to you. Anything that we talked about where like it might have just been one word, or maybe it was a concept, but it stood out to you and you're wanting to like grab onto that and take that with you into your day. And if you just drop that, actually, if you want to just unmute, I would love to hear some of your voices and tell me what that word is. Mirroring my daughter's superpower to her. Yes, yes. Mirror to her divine spark. Yeah. Yeah. Spirit into form. Yeah. Same. Connection. Yeah. You don't have to pick a persona. Yes, that's so good. So good. You don't have to pick. Divine spark and internal power. Jory, you liked the affirmation, and that I speak it back to her. Yeah. That our daughters can be who they want to be. Yep. Still be feminine.
I like that you use the word spaciousness too, to allow for that
Mm.
permission, for them to embody whatever it is that they're feeling that day.
Yeah. Spaciousness. That's good.
Also, it can be easy. It can be made easy, just finding the way to do that.
Yeah. That's so good. That's good. It can be.
Sorry, I also meant to add that I feel like it gives us permission. It was a beautiful reminder giving us permission to embody that spaciousness and just moment by moment check in with ourselves to be like, who do I feel like I am today? Or what is
Yes.
it that I want to,
Yes,
how do I
Jen.
want to show up?
Yes, that's good. And I hope that what you are hearing is that we're not doing this for our daughters. We're not like, when you like, there's times when you like play the game because like you want to be a good parent and like you're going to play the game and you don't want to play it. That's not what this is.
Yeah.
This is reminding us of who we are. This is us doing the work and then translating that immediately to our daughters and not creating this like, oh, well, when you're grown up, like when you're old enough, like then you can enter into wisdom or whatever, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's doing the work. It's reminding ourselves. So really showing up to whether it's a circle or if that's not your thing, a conversation, it's showing up being a participant and a teacher, right? You're embodying both things because we're learning too. And our daughters are going to feel that. They're going to feel the difference of showing up of like, oh, mom's going to like tell me a bunch of stuff right now. Or like, when you pass the thing and it comes to you, what are you really thankful for? Don't just say something. Like, what are you really feeling thankful for? And I think going back to the question of like, how do I get my daughters to be into this? It might not happen immediately, but I think when they see us fully engaging in something that's really important and like actually helping us to live more alive and be a fuller of expression of ourselves, I think I have to believe that translates to them, right? They're going to sniff out if we're just like going through the motions. So like, just be true to you. Like what feels good to you. Don't copy exactly what I do. Be true to what feels good to you. And then your daughters are going to they're going to be energized by that. They're going to feel the life in it. So yeah, thank you, Jen. I kind of went off on a rant about that, but I think that's a huge takeaway is that this is our work. And we're mothers of daughters. So we're going to immediately translate that to them.
And I just want to say that my family of 4 we lived with Jess and her family in 850 square feet for 4 months. And there's
COVID.
There's nobody that embodies this like she does. I mean, I know you're all here because, you trust her, but I can just really say that when she says like, her daughters are crazy. And but like, it's not always perfect and beautiful. When she says it can be simple, it really can. Like there's so much just like movement and energy and things that sometimes feel like how could we ever even possibly pull this together? And yet it's totally possible. Even if it's like 3 minutes where you just share that moment together of intention, because like she's saying, it's like you are showing up to that and they're seeing you show up to that, even when it's messy, even when it's unraveled, even when it's just a total mess, right? Because that's what life is a lot of the times.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to say that like Jess really, really, really walks this out, and I've lived it and seen it in her life.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you. Yeah. You all can do it. Will the sessions of the course be recorded? Yes. Yep. That they will all be recorded. So if there's one you can't make or 2, they're all going to be available to you and you'll just have ongoing access to them. And I'll also have accompanying workbooks kind of similar to the one that you got for this class. So you'll have like a reference for the kinds of things that we're talking about. Intuition embodiment needs practice. Yes, Vera, whether mother or daughter, loving the idea of practicing in the framework of these circles and that it may be messy. Yeah, 100%. we're born with it, you guys, like we're born with these superpowers, but also like think of the superheroes. We also need to practice them. We also need to like hone in what is going on and figure out like what our version of that thing is. So like there has to be a forum to practice them for sure. And circles are just one way, you know, there's lots of, I'm sure there's lots of ways. Yeah. Beautiful comments, you guys. Thank you deeply for showing up. Thank you for doing the work with your daughters, right? The big why behind all of this is that I feel like we're all part of what someone mentioned earlier, which is a shift, which is like a full on shift of how we show up in the world together as masculine and feminine. And I think us and our daughters are a part of that. So this work is not just about what happens in your home. It's a bigger deal. And I'm honored to be with you all on the journey. So much love to you. I will be following up with an email so you have the information that you need. And if this is a journey you want to continue, I would love, love, love to have you. So please feel free to reach out with any questions that come up. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.